Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Bangalore. Mr. Anand Sharma, welcome to the Institute of Management, Bangalore this evening. It's a pleasure to have a very unusual person amongst us who Mugda tells me is a politician, but then she also says that in a politician, the country lost a professor. Mr. Sharma was coming to Bangalore and we grabbed on the opportunity to have him over here on the campus to interact with us, talk about the things that are happening in the country and especially in the domain of industry. And it's a pleasure that Mr. Sharma that you took this evening. I know Bangalore is not the easiest of place to travel, and coming to IIM is quite a trek. Many times you can fly from Bombay to Bangalore faster than reaching from Bangalore to the airport here. But hopefully over a period of time that too shall change. It's a pleasure to introduce Mr. Anand Sharma to you. Most of you recognize him, most of you know who he is, but there's some very interesting features about his life and his career which I would really like to talk to you about. And before we invite him to come and talk to us about what's happening in India, about manufacturing, about India's industrial growth and development in general. Mr. Sharma was born in Shimla and is a lawyer by education. He has been a prominent leader of the student and youth movement in India. He was the founder of NSUI and also the president of Indian National Youth Congress. He was first elected to Parliament in 1984 at the age of 31. Mr. Sharma joined the Union Council of Ministers with responsibility for foreign affairs in January 2006, and he also assumed the additional charge of Union Minister of State and Information Broadcasting in October 2008. He was given the responsibility in the Union Cabinet of India as Minister of Commerce and Industry, and he assumed charge in 2009 with an additional charge of Textile Ministry in July 2011. So you can see the breadth of experience here in the minister, and I'm sure you have you've also seen him in action over the last several months, several years I should say, when the FDI policy, the free trade agreements, as well as the national manufacturing policy came into force in the country. As a Minister of Commerce and Industry, he re-energized the stalled Doha round talks by convening a ministerial meeting in Delhi. The India-ASEAN Agreement, the India-Korea Agreement, the India-Malaysia CCA, and the India-Japan agreements were signed during his tenure. As a measure of simplifying the foreign investment policy regime, a consolidated FDI policy document was released by him. Mr. Sharma brings to his ministerial assignment a vast reservoir of knowledge in international affairs. He has considerable experience in representing India at a diplomatic interactions at all levels and has led delegations to a large number of countries. Most interestingly, he is the editor of a book titled The Gandhian Way, which captures the epic saga of Satyagraha of Mahatma Gandhi. And he has recently authored the book Journey of a Nation, Indian National Congress. It's a commemorative publication to mark the 125 years of foundation of the Indian National Congress. Mr. Sharma is deeply involved in work relating to autism and disabilities. He has a keen interest in sports and was a member of the Sports Authority of India. He was conferred the Order of the Companion of Volta, a top Ghanaian civilian award from Ghana in 2008 in recognition of his commitment to South-South cooperation. He was also honored with the Commander of the National Order of Merit, which is the highest civilian award by the President of Ivory Coast in 2009. And he was also given a special award by South African President Jacob Zuma on the occasion of 150 years of the first arrival of Indians in South Africa, in recognition of his contribution to developing strong relationships between India and South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, we have here a minister who has traversed wide distance in terms of his experience, variety of interests, and really is leading the charge to take India into another element of domain. Please welcome Mr. Anand Sharma.
The Director of the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, Dr. Pankaj Chandra, Mr. Devnath Tirupati, professors, members of the academia, students of IIM Bangalore, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to thank the Director, Pankaj Chandra, for his very generous introduction. I am very privileged to be here this evening to share my thoughts, my concerns, and also our priorities. I am conscious as I talk to you that I am speaking to people who know more about the subject, beginning with the Director himself, many of the professors who have the experience of working on manufacturing, understanding manufacturing, and how our country's journey has been intertwined, not only with economic development growth, with technological development, embracing new technologies, but beyond that, India's own growing competitive strength in a field which matters today, it will matter in the coming years and in future. Here are students present here. All of us were students at one point of time. And when we were in college and university, I can say that one of the missed things could be that I could have been a much better student, but then I became more of a student activist. But I did complete my education. But what is important is to understand that one is erudition, one is wisdom, knowledge, and information. There has to be a fine balance as we move on in our journey of life. If that balance is lost, we do not grow as a wholesome person, capable of making a contribution to the society and to the country. Each one of us, as citizens of this great nation, have a responsibility. With the younger generation in particular, they have their dreams and aspirations. like the youth anywhere in the world. And when you complete your education, you'll be empowered in a manner where the majority of the young people of this country are not empowered. Yes, you have entered these campuses because of your brilliant minds, because of your hard work, because of your background, upbringing, and the investment that your parents and families have made. That was the case with each one of us too. But we are still a country where such institutions are not too many, where over decades the investment made was not adequate to meet the aspirations of this great country. And the reason was very simple. It's deeply rooted in history. That was the subjugation of our country, the colonization. Not only India, many countries of Asia, Africa, Latin America. And primarily it was because of the technology-powered manufacturing and the great divide which came with the technologies a few centuries ago. That changed the history of many nations, people. And our country, like others, who were similarly placed or disadvantaged, were not able to make their own decisions or choices, access our own resources, make our own policies, build our own institutions. And that's historically documented. I'm not lamenting, but it's important as you are given any position of responsibility to remain connected with the long journey and look at the present and the future which beckons all of us, particularly the youth. Because the younger generation who are the stakeholders in any country's future. That is the strength of any society or country. And young people by nature have to be inquisitive. They have a questioning mind. If they don't have, there is something wrong. They are rebellious. They are idealistic. I can assure you, as a political activist, I understand. I'm not saying exactly that I understand the technologies. I'm not that tech-savvy like you people or my own sons. Because the way their fingers move on gadgets, I can't do it. Whether we have the time or the inclination, that's a separate question. But as we talk of the subject on which I was asked to speak, it's important for me to first look at the priorities before this country, where we are in the second decade of the 21st century, what India must do, not only for its economic growth and development, not to ensure that we harness the potential of a younger generation, that we create through our institutions of excellence, our citizens, young citizens, who will be leaders of tomorrow, be it entrepreneurs or professors and teachers, political leaders, or any other vocation. When you step out, it will be a vast world, which is very challenging. You carry with you the knowledge, but at the same time, it's an uncertain world you step in, where what is present can change because of the developments that take place within our own countries or globally. Because you'll be engaged with a world which is different from the world in which I was born. Our generation, born a few years after India's independence, didn't have too many options. That time our country was struggling. struggling to find a way forward. We had bright minds. We had leaders of the freedom struggle. We didn't have resources. We have too much of backwardness. It was an impoverished nation, but a rich civilization. So we grew up in that environment. The television was not known to us, to this country, until the Asian Games, when the first black and white television sets appeared, and we were looking at that in wonderment. The old black telephones, very few families had the privilege to have those phones ringing in their homes. Today, the world is interconnected, interdependent. It's truly globalized. And a globalized world brings to us both opportunities and challenges. It's important when we are talking of economic growth, development, manufacturing, job creation, that we also look at the other issues. Because we cannot insulate or compartmentalize some of these challenges as the world continues to experience. Going way back to 2008-9, and if I have to go back, then where the big change started in the post-Second World War era, that's the 1990. And today, in the first decade, suddenly another wave of technologies which has changed the world. Nobody would have thought that we'll be talking of from mainframe computers now to palm tops, tablets, iPhones, Twitter, Facebook. There may be many more names which I don't know. So that is the world in which you are going to live, where technology empowers, but technology challenges. But the developments in one part of the world affect you and us, and developments in any region impact on the other part of the world. Because planet Earth is one whole, and the thinking which is there in many countries, unfortunately, that has been part of the global discourse, which we have seen between the developed countries and the developing countries when it comes to sharing of technologies, resources, or building global partnerships, that kind of segregation or discrimination has been there, which has hurt the global economy much more. And had that not happened, perhaps there would have been more opportunities and resources created. But our own country has moved on. Moved on from a big crisis of 1991, that was a balance of payment crisis. That was the time there was a big shift taking place in the world after the collapse of the Berlin Wall. Because we grew up when the global discourse was about the Cold War. The world divided into two rival camps, one led by America, one led by the Soviet Union, the Warsaw Pact and the NATO alliance. In 1990, it changed. In 1991, things changed more. India had to find its own way. And that's where, when we embarked on the path of economic liberalization, we opened up our economy. And in fashionable discourse, many analysts still say that this is where the Indian journey began. I find it very difficult to accept. India's journey began in right earnest on 15th August 1947. And the Nehru's famous speech, of Tryst with Destiny. And in the 50s, 60s, 70s, as we invested our meager resources to build institutions, like our IITs, IIMs, Indian Institutes of Science, nuclear science, space science. We built up Bokaro, Bhilai, the big dams, Bhakra, Nagarjuna Sagar, and the list is a long one. If you really connect your mind as to what was happening over decades, it was a major national effort. It was an investment made by leaders, by our citizens, by our entrepreneurs, year on year. Otherwise, if that had not happened, we would not be where we are. We would not have been able to step out and engage with the world with the self-confidence and pride that we demonstrated in 1991. It's true that we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the foreign exchange. Business as such was considered to be a taboo. We were struggling when it comes to high GDP growth, manufacturing. This is not that the manufacturing in the country had not taken place. But now when we look at this larger issue, that how important it is for our country. We have a priority when it comes to high economic growth. We know the hurtful effects if the economy gets pulled down. As it happened from 2008-9 onwards, that was not something which we did to ourselves. It was again what I was referring to earlier, that the global connectivity and interdependence. Because we had one of the worst economic crises, preceded by a financial crisis, which made it deeper and more severe. And there was no country in the world which was not affected. And that's where the mettle of leadership of all countries developing got tested. We ourselves have faced, we rebounded, and are again today confronted with a downturn. The worst news for India of 2012 was to grow at 5% plus. Having grown at more than 9% for 5 consecutive years before the global crisis engulfed all of us. Therefore, what should be the priorities of India? High economic growth is a national priority. Wealth creation has to be a priority. Resource creation has to be a priority. What is important is to understand that it's ethically correct to encourage entrepreneurs, business leaders to invest, to manufacture, to create jobs. More importantly, resource generation, resource creation, and its redistribution for inclusive growth and sustainable development is not an option, but India's need. So that those sections of our society who are still not empowered or historically disadvantaged benefit from the fruits of industrial growth, investment, and manufacturing. So it's not just one activity that you are manufacturing an automobile or you're producing some pharmaceuticals or chemicals. Irrespective of what you are engaged in, conventional wisdom has always dictated one path. That is agriculture paving the way to manufacturing, and then services. And I have thought very deeply about it. Particularly when I was given this responsibility, which I was not expecting. And sometime towards the end of 2009, I was thinking, that though the share of manufacturing in our GDP was 16%, it remained a major job creator or provider. But the share of services was over 60%. It had grown. And this is the story of India of 1991 onwards, when we were able to look at what was happening in the world, and those rich human resources which came out of our institutes of excellence were able to leapfrog to bridge the great technological divide, to put India in a leadership position. By the turn of the century, we were already being recognized and respected, particularly in communication, in information technology. But it does not take a lot of research to know that beyond a point, the services sector will not provide employment. Services sector will black you out. Services will grow on the strength of manufacturing. Jobs will come from manufacturing. You cannot have a country of 1.2 billion people with a median age of 24, with a share of manufacturing 16% in its GDP. India's agriculture cannot sustain 55% of the population. Land holdings are getting fragmented. There is a shift which is taking place. Sons and daughters of farmers also have these tools of technology, access to information. The 24/7 media has changed the world, created expectations, and also created disillusionment and disappointments. We have to look at that. And when we thought it through, it was very clear that India must make a national effort on manufacturing. And that led us to work on the national manufacturing policy. That was in January 2010. I distinctly recall it was the first Saturday of that month, and I was in Jaipur, when I did announce that India will have its manufacturing policy and we'll create mega investment and manufacturing zones. Thereafter, it was a tough journey. We talked to everyone. We looked at the global models. We looked at what Germany and Japan had done post-Second World War. Because where was Japan? The transformation of Japan, the transformation of Korea, in short spans of time, from making low-cost products to today, when anything which is sophisticated in electronics, in manufacturing, somewhere you'll find few Japanese names and the companies. Same happened to Korea. Then we had a big neighbor in North, China. Then we look at ourselves. We have challenges, which we recognized. So after intense stakeholders consultations between the industry, the state governments, the different departments of the government. Now, I must be honest, when you are negotiating within your country and within the government between different departments, it's a kind of a dialogue which is very difficult for an outsider to comprehend. Because if you ask me honestly, what is the strength of India's people, Indian mind, its wisdom? The biggest malaise of India is the turf mindset and lack of team spirit. So anybody who is doing something conventional doesn't want to give up. And do not want rationalization, simplification. Every state has its own rules, approval mechanisms. Different departments will hold on to the subject which they have since 1950 as if it's a personal property. Like children still will be possessive of toys. But here we were confronted with that reality. These were bruising turf battles that we negotiated. And if you ask me, among many important days or events in my life's journey, if the biggest was the most moving moment when I moved India's resolution on 15 June 2007 as Ravi, who was Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs, declaring Mahatma Gandhi's birth anniversary as the International Day of Non-Violence. At the same time, in my current responsibilities, 24th of October 2011 was truly a landmark day when the Cabinet finally approved the National Manufacturing Policy. That's a reality today. What we have done and what we seek to achieve. We want to raise the share of manufacturing in our GDP within this decade to 25%. I know it's a challenge, but if you don't aim high, you can't become big. These are not options. These are national imperatives and needs. We propose to create at least 100 million skilled jobs in one decade. And we want to achieve this through the principal instrument, that's the National Investment and Manufacturing Zones. So not just manufacturing zones, because that's a bit confusing. These are integrated greenfield industrial townships. The smallest will be 50 square kilometer. We were ready. As we were working on the policy, we were also working in parallel tracks, knowing that in our country there are many complications. Land will always be an issue and an emotive one. And once you announce an area that this will be where the new township will come, speculation will be there, litigations will start, land acquisition will become impossible. So I was talking to the chief ministers that be ready. I'm not going to tell you where. You have to start working, identifying land parcels or create land banks. On 25th of October, the very next day, we announced 7 National Investment and Manufacturing Zones, all along the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor. That again is perhaps one of the biggest, and as per the World Bank, second most innovative infrastructure project conceived anywhere in the world. Today, the number of these townships approved and announced is 12. India is not going to have a proliferation of these. If 12 or 14 take off, which they will, this is an investment in this country's future. It will transform India for the better. It will make India a manufacturing hub and power of the world. We have to believe in ourselves to achieve this. And it is different from what we have done in the past. We have never thought so since our independence. To my mind, this policy rollout is the biggest and most significant in recent decades, which connects to our young people, their aspirations, their need, their future. We were also conscious of the fact that if we don't do it, there is a social dimension. I became more seriously concerned, if I have to share with you, as we were fighting these battles. When there was a recruitment camp for 100 ITBP constables in Bareilly in UP. Interviews were cancelled. More than 100,000 young men were there. While returning on the roofs of the train, 43 died that day. Do you recall? And I said to my colleagues, if we don't do it, the social cost will be unbearable for India to pay. That's why it is not an option. But what we are doing differently is important to understand. After India's independence, a couple of townships came up. Chandigarh came up as a city. Jawaharlal Nehru's time. Gandhinagar came up. Jamshedpur came up as the steel city. The Tatas take the credit for doing that. But what was done for Chandigarh, what was done, these are residential cities for Gandhinagar, not industrial township, was that an article in the Constitution of India 243 QC was invoked. So these are self-regulating, they are their own authorities. We have invoked it. These townships will be self-governed, self-regulated. Effectively, we have put in place a single window clearance mechanism. Considering the bad name that we have earned because of the complicated approval mechanisms, delays, red tapes, that we rank poorly in the World Bank report of the ease of doing business, or the comfort of doing business, and the startups. These will be managed through SPV. These are being developed by the Government of India in partnership with the states of the Republic. Land is the equity of the state government. This land will not be alienated. The land will be made available to investors, Indian and foreign, to set up manufacturing facilities. They just have to file the application to the SPV and the approvals will follow. The trunk infrastructure is being funded by the Government of India. The internal infrastructure will be also having the benefit of viability gap funding. There are a lot of incentives for skills training, for green technologies, for vocational training, for SMEs. Though a modest step has been taken to create a technology acquisition fund. Today of the 12th, if I technically keep out the 13th, where the benefits of the mother policy have been invoked. And one of them is in Karnataka. That's not on the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor. There are two in Andhra, they are not on the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor. Of the three in Maharashtra, one is not on the corridor. That's in Vidarbha near Nagpur. But in your state of Karnataka, this state of Karnataka, Tumkur is the one which has been approved. And there's an IT investment region in near Bangalore, which is coming up, which has been declared as a NIMS. I'll come to that later. While walking with the director, we briefly did talk about the electronic hardware and how it is a national priority, that is where we have lagged behind. So that's where what the focus thrust today, to have our own national mission for wafer chip manufacturing. The Cabinet of India has approved two major projects. But it's a larger discourse, even if you go sectorally, it will take a lot of time. But if we are a global leader in IT-enabled services, we cannot be complacent because there is competition coming from other countries. Chinese are learning English. And why shouldn't they? We should be learning Chinese, Japanese, every language. Because we have to remain global leader, which we are. And this city in particular knows better. Where you have entrepreneurs like Narayana Murthy, Azim Premji and Kiran Bokta and Kiran Majumdar Shah. These are all names which today's India have. And they speak volumes about what our country's potential is. At the same time, the IT agreement as such had left us behind. With America's own share in electronic hardware plummeted. And China shot up from single digit to 33, 34%, somewhere there. We are less than 2%. That's another priority that we have. So what we are seeking to do today, not only developing one corridor or these industrial townships, there is a thinking, there is a vision, there is clarity. This is something which is happening. Of the 12, the master plan for 7 has been completed and approved. The guidelines stand notified. All departmental notifications, interministerials aligned. That has happened. More will have to be done. But we are also looking at other paths. India has to develop entirely as a nation. Different regions have their strengths, their competitiveness. Economic development is not even but uneven. We have to ensure that other states also move and catch up. There's an eastern corridor being developed. Chennai-Bengaluru corridor, we have completed the study. The next step will be taken. Japan is a major partner, technology partner. Is one country which has been truly India's friend, bringing in money, bringing in resources, and even in Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, they not only brought technologies, but they've also brought equity. They've taken 26% equity in the project as such. Recently, we had talks with the United Kingdom. First, their ministers had come here and met with me. That was preparing for Prime Minister Cameron's visit. And then I travelled to London around the 7th, 8th of February. Prime Minister Cameron was coming here on the 19th. The 18th he was in Mumbai. They were talking to us about Mumbai-Bangalore corridor. But I wanted to know what their thinking was. And I was very frank. I told them, if you want to come in, come as partners, both technology partners and equity partners. You have technologies. You have manufacturing strengths, though they have declined, but still they have formidable manufacturing strengths. And if we want to do it together, it has to be a real effort. We will have the joint study and we will move forward. So Bangalore will get connected through this corridor to the other big corridor, which covers 42% of India's population, covering 6 states and close to 1,500 kilometers. That's the Delhi-Mumbai. These are the changes that are taking place, particularly for the students here, the young people. This is going to happen. You will not be the beneficiaries, but you will be the proud Indians who will visit some of these and see it. I'm sure, I cannot say about myself, but many in my generation may live to see some of these come up. That's why I use this word. This is truly an investment in this country's future. At the same time, are we going to achieve it without making our people employable, particularly with the new technologies that are coming up? Technologies have evolved as nations, societies. That's a journey of many centuries. When you look at simple spinning, weaving, that existed long back. But then the steam engine, the 18th century, using of the steam power, 1780s. 85 was the steam engine, 89 somewhere, Manchester happened. When the mechanization of the textile industry started, that spread and then permeated across the industrial sectors. And for more than a century, for a century and a half, to be precise, 161 years, steam power dominated manufacturing discourse. Though we had the other power which came in, the electricity, and Thomas Edison, from the first bulb to the lighting up of Manhattan in 1880. But until 1940, it took those still 50, 60 years. This was not used for industrial manufacturing. There was a second wave of industrial revolution had come from Detroit in America, from automobile industry, which again spread across industrial sectors when mass production lines or assembly lines were set up. Today we see global assembly lines. We have one product which you and I have. Then it is parts are manufactured in different countries. When that battery malfunctioned in Dreamliner, I read an article that which part was manufactured in which part of the world. Many in Japan, many in other countries, some in America, some in Europe, some in France, and different companies. So the world becomes a manufacturing assembly line. Same goes for the iPhone. Much of what China produces are made in China. Many components are made in different countries, particularly the ASEAN region, which is very vibrant and dynamic. Many of the things get produced there. Why can't India be doing something like that and connecting also at the same time to these global chains? We should be doing that. But along with this, the other discussion has started. I was asked to speak in Davos this year. One was a discussion on the so-called BRICS wall. Have we hit a wall as BRIC nations when it comes to our development or growth? But the other was on manufacturing and 3D manufacturing. I had not heard about it. In passing, I would have seen some article, but not grasped it fully. Then I tried to educate myself, what is this 3D? Three-dimensional movies we have seen, pictures we have seen, paintings, other things, but what is this 3D manufacturing? And that's where the power of technology, customized manufacturing, where you lift layer and put layer upon layer and change it. That will be the future manufacturing. Now, I was thinking, and I was talking to my officers, my chief of staff, others. I said, listen, you shouldn't get overly worried. Today we have Indians who will connect like a rocket to this thing. And many would have. But this is not going to be the manufacturing roadmap for many decades to come. And that's where I try to have more clarity on what I was referring to earlier, the gap between lighting of Manhattan to electricity being used for industrial manufacturing. There are other important areas where India has to make more changes in its approach, mindset, build consensus, bring support. That's A is about defense manufacturing. Why a country like ours in 2013 is not producing a world-class civilian aircraft or a fighter aircraft? Why are we dependent on imports? This is a question which India must ask itself. Are we incapable? The answer is no. Earlier in the afternoon, I was at CMTI Bangalore. 2 years ago when I came there, I saw some of the amazing technologies which are developed, including metal cutting, steel cutting technologies, with the precision of 1/1,000,000th of a millimeter. Today I was shown one. And I was asking, and we were calculating. I was not that good a student in mathematics. And I got a bit confused, so was the director, who is a professor and a scientist. And finally the young people who have done it. And they explained it. It worked out to be close to Mr. Dadu 8 times more than 1/1,000,000th of a millimeter. So in 2 years I saw a new technology. We dedicated some machine. Now these are the technologies which the industry had not known. Some of them they had, because they have strategic applications. Now that's where the institutional linkages become important. Because in America and Europe, US became a dominant power. Not because of what happened only during the Second World War. Great Britain had started declining even before the First World War. Because if you look at the production of steel, consumption of steel, electricity, cement, they give you a clear picture of what was happening in the world. But America became a real power when the technologies which came on defense manufacturing and research post Second World War were used for multiple industrial applications. Today India's private sector has been allowed entry into the defense sector. We still are a bit conservative in our approach. It takes time. There's no harm as long as we continue moving and don't remain rooted. Even if we have a calibrated approach, it's a better approach. So India's private sector is tying up with the global majors. As we all have been told, so were our parents, that don't reinvent the wheel. Something which is available, get it, improve upon it. Don't think that it is a must for us to invent what is available, to have technology collaborations. But at the same time, how do we make it possible? As I said, we have to make our people employable. And that would happen only through training, skills training. After the decades that followed the adoption of India's constitution and declaring the country as a republic, institutions were built, which I did refer to. This is one of those great institutions. A great campus you have, and a great architect gave you cost-effective, maintenance-proof architecture, which has sustained itself very well for 40 years. Today, do you think it's easy to create? You have multiple litigations starting. Many people will talk of approvals. You'll run around. Land will be an issue. But the good thing is we built these institutions. But it was only now, in the first decade of the 21st century, that India decided to more than double up these institutes of excellence. 8 new IITs, 7 new IIMs, from one National Institute of Science, 5 new National Institutes of Science, from one National Institute of Design. That was 1963 in Ahmedabad with the Extension Center here and one in Gandhinagar. Now 4 more. Similarly, National Institutes of Information Technology. But what is more important, everybody is not going to become a IIT student or IIM or an Indian Institute of Science. You need to connect the young people, right from their final years in school to skills training. Embrace the best global modules and create partnership and institutional linkages. So we are establishing 1,500 more industrial training institutes. There are 1,500 ITIs, if my memory serves me right, which the industry is developing and adopting. 500 of these have been established. There are 5,000 skills training centers being established. We have a national skills training mission, which has been slow to take off, but is very much there. That is to skill 500 million Indians by 2025. It's a tall order. But you have this beautiful child, this initiative, where the parentage is claimed by multiple departments. Now we are trying to ensure that that conflict ends, so that we don't have these issues and we move forward. It is irrespective which department, which ministry. These are institutions, these are national missions which belong to the people of India, not to any one department, one ministry, one individual, one minister. That's how I think. Equally important would be to invest in innovation, in R&D. You people know better. We didn't have the resources. If we didn't invest enough in education, R&D was 1% of our GDP. Now we have declared a decade of innovation. We are raising that contribution to 2%. That will happen. Along with that, what India needs to cut the production is of bureaucratic red tape, quick decision making, and quick implementation. We must not allow in India an environment of distrust where every policy decision, the intent behind the decision is questioned, where the partisan politics pulls India back. There is need for wisdom, maturity, and a bipartisan discourse when it comes to such initiatives and decisions. So much of innovation is coming out of India. It's well documented. Out of this city itself, if half of the Fortune 500 companies, if not more, present in India, whether they have the R&D hubs or seek their software solutions, that is happening. But when you look at the patents being filed, even in America, it was interesting for me to know that of the American companies, the mother companies are there, the number of patents in recent times they have filed in America and their offshore branches in India, the number is equal. So patent applications of those companies of technologies developed out of India is equal to the patents of the mother companies. It's very interesting. A few months ago, when I was in the United Kingdom, I chanced upon a program, a television program, put together by the London School of Economics on frugal innovations from India. I never knew that all this was happening. So the list is a long one, from an ECG machine to a nano car, to how cost-effective the medical treatments have become. There's so much. But what I saw today is that our soldiers in Siachen and all, the machine is there which is miniaturized from multiple machines to one. And when I said that who are the people, the very shy youngsters, 4 of them, stepped forward, where their health is being monitored, their heart is being monitored, corrected, everything, and the machine was developed in Bangalore. It's amazing. So therefore manufacturing, investment in manufacturing, institutions creation, skills training, innovation. This is the way forward for India. I have talked a lot. My critics would say that that is the problem. There's so much to share. It's my first visit to Bangalore. I don't know when I'll be meeting you people again, or some of you. I'll therefore conclude, and there's only one quote which I would like to share in the contemporary context. That is of Steve Jobs. And it says, quote, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Stay hungry, stay foolish." Unquote. Thank you.